A dying wolf lay trapped beneath 2 fallen trees while the snow slowly buried him alive. 3 poisoned arrows pierced his body. His blood stained the ice beneath him. Not far away, hundreds of soldiers searched the mountains with one command echoing through the forest: find the Alpha King before anyone else does. But the first person to reach him was not a warrior, not a hunter, not a king. It was a rejected Omega who could barely keep herself standing. Only hours earlier, Lyra Ashwood had been humiliated before her entire pack. The Alpha chosen by the Moon Goddess looked into her eyes and rejected her without a trace of regret. No one defended her. No one followed her. They watched her disappear into the frozen wilderness, believing she would never return. Now fate placed one impossible choice before her. She had enough healing power left to save only one life, her own, or the dying wolf lying in the snow. She never asked why such a powerful beast was covered in battle scars. She never questioned why poisoned arrows meant for warriors were buried deep inside its body. She simply knelt beside him, placed her trembling hands against his frozen fur, and gave away the last piece of herself. Warm golden light poured from her hands until her heartbeat grew weaker than his. The wolf opened his eyes. Lyra closed hers. As darkness claimed her, she never heard the voices racing through the trees. There. Someone is with him. Kill anyone protecting the Alpha King. Because the wolf she had just saved was not merely the ruler of every alpha. He was the only man who knew the truth about the pendant hanging around her neck. A truth hidden for 20 years. A truth that would turn the rejected Omega, everyone abandoned into the woman an entire kingdom would one day kneel before. The sound of a wolf howling through the frozen mountains echoed across the valley just as a young woman stumbled through the snow with blood on her trembling hands. Every step felt heavier than the last. The icy wind tore through her thin cloak, while snowflakes settled in her chestnut hair. Her breathing came in painful gasps. Her healing energy was almost gone. If she stopped moving now, she would never stand again. Yet something pulled her deeper into the forest. Something waiting beyond the silence. She did not know that before this night ended, she would save the life of the most powerful alpha alive. She did not know that the wolf, lying somewhere ahead, would one day kneel before her. Right now, she was only a forgotten Omega who had lost everything. Only 3 days earlier, the Moonstone Pack had been filled with celebration. Hundreds of wolves gathered inside the great stone courtyard beneath glowing torches that pushed back the cold darkness of winter. Colorful banners danced above the crowd while music drifted through the crisp evening air. Every family stood together, smiling proudly as they waited for the sacred mate ceremony to begin. It was the most important night of the year. The Moon Goddess would reveal destined mates before the entire pack, and new futures would begin. Lyra Ashwood stood quietly near the center of the courtyard with her hands folded together. Her heart refused to slow down. She wore the only beautiful dress she owned. It was simple but carefully stitched by her own hands from faded blue fabric. Her dark green cloak rested gently over her shoulders, and around her neck hung a silver crescent moon, pendant left behind by her mother many years ago. She touched it softly for courage. People barely looked at her. Some whispered behind their hands. Others laughed without trying to hide it. An Omega healer could never become Luna. Everyone believed that. Lyra had lived with those words her entire life. She lowered her eyes and tried not to hear the cruel voices. One woman smiled coldly as she walked past. "Poor girl," she whispered. Another answered, "She should be grateful if anyone even claims her." Lyra swallowed the pain in silence. She had learned long ago that silence hurt less than arguing with people who had already decided her worth. At the far end of the courtyard, the great doors opened. Every voice disappeared. Alpha Rowan Blackthorn entered surrounded by his beta guards. Tall, powerful, broad-shouldered, his black cloak flowed behind him like a shadow while his sharp gray eyes swept across the crowd. Confidence surrounded him so naturally that every wolf instinctively lowered their head in respect. He was the strongest alpha in the Eastern Territories, and every young woman dreamed of standing beside him as Luna. Except Lyra had never dreamed of power. She had only dreamed of belonging somewhere. The High Elder stepped forward and raised both hands toward the silver moon above. The sacred ceremony began. Ancient words filled the courtyard as wolves closed their eyes in prayer. A soft breeze moved between them, carrying the scent of pine forests and fresh snow. One by one names were called. Mates found each other. Some laughed with joy. Others cried happy tears while families embraced. Then the elder spoke another name. Lyra Ashwood. A strange silence spread across the crowd. The elder looked toward Rowan. Alpha Rowan Blackthorn. For a single heartbeat, nobody breathed. Lyra slowly lifted her eyes. Rowan stared directly at her. His expression showed no happiness, only disbelief. The invisible bond between them tightened like a thread, pulling at both of their souls. Lyra felt warmth rush through her chest. The moon goddess had chosen them. For the first time in her life, hope bloomed inside her. Small, fragile, beautiful. She took one careful step toward him, then another. The entire courtyard watched. Rowan's jaw tightened. His eyes hardened. Without warning, he stepped backward as if she carried a deadly disease. A murmur rolled through the crowd. Lyra stopped walking. Confusion filled her face. Rowan's voice shattered the silence. I reject Lyra Ashwood as my mate. His words struck harder than any blade. Gasps echoed across the courtyard. The sacred bond twisted violently inside Lyra's chest. Pain exploded through her body. Her knees almost gave way beneath her. She searched his face, hoping this was some terrible mistake. Instead, she found disgust. Rowan looked at her as though she were beneath him. An Omega healer cannot stand beside an Alpha. She is weak. She is ordinary. She would shame this pack as Luna. I refuse the moon goddess choice. The crowd erupted into whispers. Some looked shocked. Many smiled. Others laughed openly. Lyra heard every cruel word. She is not worthy. She always knew her place. The Alpha deserves better. A little girl standing beside her mother asked an innocent question. Why is everyone laughing at her? The mother answered quietly, because dreams belong to people born stronger than she was. Those words hurt even more than Rowan's rejection. Lyra's eyes filled with tears she refused to let fall. She stood perfectly still while the pack judged her like an unwanted animal. The High Elder frowned deeply. Alpha Rowan, this decision cannot be taken lightly. The moon goddess herself created the mate bond. Rowan never looked away from Lyra. Then let the goddess choose again. Because I never will. The final thread connecting their souls snapped. Lyra cried out as invisible pain tore through her heart. She dropped to one knee, unable to breathe. The silver pendant around her neck grew strangely warm beneath her trembling fingers, but nobody noticed. Not even Lyra. Rowan turned his back without another word. He walked away while applause slowly rose from parts of the crowd. No one came to help her. No one defended her. Not even the wolves she had healed for years. The children whose fevers she had cured hid behind their parents. The elders she had cared for lowered their eyes. Friends disappeared into the crowd. In one cruel moment, she became completely alone. The Alpha Council gathered before sunrise. Their judgment came quickly. Since the Alpha had rejected her publicly, the pack would no longer provide food, shelter, or protection. Lyra was ordered to leave Moonstone territory before nightfall. She packed everything she owned into one small leather bag. A few herbs, a healing knife, extra bandages, her mother's pendant, nothing more. As she reached the great wooden gates, she turned for one final look. This had been her home since childhood. Every memory lived behind those walls. Every kindness, every wound, every hope, none of it belonged to her anymore. The heavy gates slammed shut behind her. The sound echoed across the frozen valley like the closing of a grave. Ahead stretched endless forests buried beneath snow. No home, no family, no destination, only silence. Lyra pulled her torn cloak tightly around herself and stepped into the white wilderness without looking back. Far above the dark pine trees, a distant wolf let out a long, haunting howl that sent shivers through the frozen air. She did not know that the cry did not belong to an ordinary wolf. It belonged to a king fighting for his final breath. The frozen forest swallowed Lyra without mercy. Snow drifted through the towering pines until every path disappeared beneath a blanket of white. The wind howled through the branches like restless spirits, searching for someone who had long been forgotten. Every breath burned inside her lungs. Every step stole more strength from her weary body. She had not eaten since leaving the Moonstone pack. Hunger gnawed at her stomach while exhaustion settled into her bones. Still, she refused to stop. If she sat down even for a moment, the mountain winter would claim her life before dawn. Hours passed beneath a sky that grew darker with every heartbeat. The silence around her felt unnatural. No bird sang. No deer crossed her path. Even the wolves stayed hidden. It was as though the entire forest sensed danger moving somewhere beyond the trees. Lyra wrapped her torn cloak tighter around herself and kept walking until the faint sound of rushing water reached her ears. A river! Fresh water meant survival. She pushed through thick bushes and finally stepped onto the edge of a wide frozen stream where cracked sheets of ice floated across the current. The water moved slowly beneath the frozen surface, carrying broken branches toward the valley below. She knelt beside the river and cupped freezing water into her hands. Before she could drink, something else reached her ears. A low, painful growl. It was weak, barely louder than the wind. Lyra slowly lifted her head. The sound came again, this time closer. Her heartbeat quickened. Every lesson she had learned as a healer warned her not to investigate. An injured predator was often more dangerous than a healthy one. Alone and defenseless, she stood no chance against a wild wolf. She should leave. She tried to take a step away. Then another cry echoed through the trees. Not angry, not threatening. It sounded like suffering. Lyra closed her eyes. She had spent her whole life healing pain. Ignoring it felt impossible. With slow, careful steps, she followed the sound through snow-covered rocks until the forest suddenly opened before her. She froze. A massive silver wolf lay trapped beneath two enormous pine trunks that had crashed down during a recent storm. One heavy log pinned its back leg, while shattered branches surrounded its body like broken spears. Thick silver fur was stained dark with blood. Fresh wounds covered its shoulders, and deep claw marks crossed its ribs. The animal barely moved. Only its chest rose and fell in shallow, painful breaths. Lyra had never seen a wolf this large. Its paws alone were almost the size of her head. Old scars covered its powerful body, telling stories of countless battles. One long scar stretched across its left eye, giving it a fierce appearance, even while unconscious. This was no ordinary wolf, yet something about its condition made her heart ache. Slowly she stepped closer. The wolf opened one amber eye. Their eyes met. Instead of rage, she saw exhaustion. Instead of violence, she saw quiet determination, refusing to surrender. Then the wolf tried to stand. The heavy tree shifted. Pain exploded through its body. A heartbreaking cry escaped its throat before it collapsed again. Lyra instinctively rushed forward. Easy, she whispered softly. Do not fight it. You will only make it worse. The wolf watched her carefully. Its ears lowered, not in aggression, in surrender. Lyra swallowed hard. Who did this to you? She examined the wounds with trembling fingers. Several cuts had already become infected. One broken arrow remained buried deep beneath thick fur near the shoulder. This had not been an accident. Someone had hunted this wolf. She carefully looked around. No hunters. No footprints except those almost hidden beneath fresh snowfall. The attackers had already gone. Lyra placed both hands against the fallen tree. It refused to move. She pushed harder. Nothing. The trunk was simply too heavy. Tears filled her eyes. I cannot leave you here. The wolf closed its eyes as though accepting death. That simple movement shattered the last wall around Lyra's heart. She searched her small leather bag and removed a tiny healing herb. Only one remained, the last medicine she possessed. She crushed the leaves between her fingers and gently pressed them against the worst wounds. The bleeding slowed but did not stop. It was not enough. The wolf would never survive without healing energy. Lyra stared at her own trembling hands. She had almost no strength left. After the rejection ceremony, the broken mate bond had drained much of her spiritual power. Walking through the freezing mountains had consumed the rest. If she used healing magic now, she might never wake again. She looked toward the darkening sky, then back at the wolf. You deserve to live, even if I do not. She knelt beside the giant creature and closed her eyes. The old prayer returned from childhood. Her mother's gentle voice echoed inside her memory. A healer gives life without asking who deserves it. Healing is not power. Healing is love. Warm tears rolled down Lyra's cheeks. She placed both palms over the wolf's wounded shoulder. Soft golden light slowly appeared beneath her fingers. The wolf's body suddenly trembled. Ancient symbols briefly shimmered beneath its silver fur before disappearing again. Lyra never noticed. She continued whispering the forgotten prayer while more light poured from her hands. The deep wounds slowly began closing. Broken flesh healed. Blood stopped flowing. The poisoned arrow slipped free from the wolf's body and fell silently into the snow. The forest itself seemed to pause. Even the wind became still. Far away, hidden beneath thick pine trees, several armored riders suddenly pulled their horses to a stop. One soldier looked toward the distant glow between the trees. "Did you see that?" Another tightened his grip around his sword. "Magic." The captain narrowed his eyes. "Spread out. Search every part of his forest. The Alpha King cannot have gone far." Meanwhile, Lyra's breathing became weaker. The golden light faded. Her vision blurred. The cold suddenly felt much deeper than before. She smiled weakly at the recovering wolf. "There. You are going to live. That is enough." Her hand slipped from the wolf's body. The last of her healing power left with them. Darkness rushed into her vision. Her body collapsed gently onto the snow beside the giant silver wolf. She did not move again. For several long moments, everything remained silent. Snow continued falling over both of them until a thin white blanket covered Lyra's shoulders. Then something changed. The wolf slowly opened both amber eyes. Its breathing was stronger now. The terrible pain inside its body had almost disappeared. It looked toward the unconscious young woman lying beside it. A deep, intelligent sadness filled its gaze. Very carefully the wolf pulled against the fallen tree. This time the massive trunk shifted. With one final surge of strength it forced itself free. The broken wood rolled aside. The giant wolf stood unsteadily over Lyra. Blood still stained its fur, but its life had been saved. It lowered its enormous head toward her pale face. Its nose gently brushed her frozen cheek. She was ice cold. The wolf let out a low, worried whine. Not far away the voices of soldiers echoed through the forest. "Search everywhere. He cannot be far." The wolf lifted its head. Its sharp eyes turned toward the approaching danger. For just a heartbeat, an ancient royal symbol faintly glowed beneath the silver fur on its shoulder before vanishing into the darkness once more. Then the great wolf stepped protectively in front of the unconscious healer. Anyone who wanted to reach her now would first have to face the most feared wolf in the kingdom. The first rays of morning slipped through the frozen pine trees and painted the snow with pale gold. The bitter wind had softened during the night, but the cold still clung to everything it touched. Lyra remained motionless beneath a blanket of fresh snow, while the giant silver wolf stood over her like an unshakable guardian. His amber eyes never left the forest around them. Every sound mattered now. Every shifting branch could hide another enemy. The voices of armed men drifted through the trees once again. They were closer. The wolf slowly raised his head. His ears turned toward the sound. He recognized the scent carried by the wind long before the soldiers came into view. Steel, horses, blood, betrayal. A deep growl rumbled inside his chest. The sound never reached the soldiers. He swallowed it. Something inside him warned him not to fight. Not yet. His body was still healing. The wounds beneath his silver fur had closed, but his strength had not fully returned. Whoever had hunted him expected him to die beneath those fallen trees. If they discovered he had survived, they would never stop chasing him. The wolf looked down at the young woman lying in the snow. She had chosen his life over her own. He would not allow her sacrifice to become meaningless. With surprising gentleness, the giant wolf lowered himself beside Lyra. He carefully gripped the edge of her cloak between his teeth and slowly pulled her across the snow toward a narrow passage hidden behind thick bushes and broken rocks. Beyond them stood an abandoned hunter's cabin almost completely buried beneath snow and forgotten by time. Its roof leaned to one side. One window was broken. The wooden door hung loosely on rusted hinges, but it offered shelter. The wolf pushed the door open with his shoulder and carefully dragged Lyra inside. Dust floated through the cold air. Old furniture lay scattered across the small room. A stone fireplace still stood against one wall. The wolf gently laid Lyra near the cold hearth before disappearing back into the forest. Minutes later, he returned carrying dry branches between his jaws. Again he vanished. Again he returned. By the time the sun climbed higher, a small pile of wood rested beside the fireplace. Lyra slowly opened her eyes. Everything around her blurred together. The wooden ceiling, the smell of old smoke, the faint crackling sound of fresh fire. She frowned. Fire. Someone had built a fire. She forced herself to sit up. Pain spread through every part of her body. Across the room, the giant silver wolf lay quietly watching her. Its amber eyes met hers. She smiled weakly. You survived. The wolf slowly lowered its head as if answering her. Lyra laughed softly despite the pain. I suppose we saved each other. She searched her bag. Only a handful of dried roots remained. Not enough for both of them. Still she divided them into 2 equal portions. One for herself. One for the wolf. She pushed the food toward him. Eat. You need your strength. The wolf stared at the food, then at her. Instead of eating his own share, he nudged it back toward Lyra. She blinked in surprise. No. I am serious. You need it more than I do. The wolf refused again. For a long moment, they simply looked at each other. Finally, Lyra sighed. You are stubborn. The wolf quietly closed his eyes. If wolves could smile, he almost seemed to. Outside the cabin, distant hoofbeats echoed across the valley. Both of them became still. The wolf instantly rose to his feet. His muscles tightened. Lyra moved toward the broken window and carefully looked outside. Several armored riders crossed the snowy hillside below. Their black cloaks carried the symbol of a silver crown surrounded by wolf claws. She had never seen that crest before. One rider pointed toward the forest. Search every cabin. He cannot disappear forever. Lyra's heartbeat quickened. Who are they looking for? The wolf remained perfectly silent. Only his eyes followed every movement outside. The soldiers disappeared into the trees. Their voices slowly faded. Relief settled over the cabin. Lyra turned back toward the wolf. Whoever they are hunting must be dangerous. The wolf lowered his gaze. For just a moment sadness crossed his face. Lyra noticed it. She stepped closer. Do not worry. They are gone. You are safe now. The wolf looked directly into her emerald eyes. Something changed. A strange warmth passed between them. Not a mate bond. Something quieter. Something built through trust instead of destiny. That evening dark clouds rolled across the mountains. Heavy snow began falling once more. The storm arrived with frightening speed. The old cabin shook beneath powerful winds. Cold air slipped through every crack in the walls. Lyra fed more wood into the fire before sitting beside it. Her eyelids grew heavy. The healing spell had taken more from her than she first realized. She rested against the wall and drifted into sleep. Hours later, she woke suddenly. Someone was breathing nearby. Not the slow breathing of a wolf. A man. She opened her eyes. A stranger sat beside the dying fire. He was tall with broad shoulders and long dark hair falling over worn black clothing. Fresh bandages wrapped his chest where terrible wounds had once been. His face was strong and weathered. A short beard shadowed his jaw. Most striking of all were his silver-gray eyes that reflected the firelight like moonlit steel. Lyra instantly reached for the small healing knife beside her. Who are you? The man looked just as confused. I do not know. His voice was calm but filled with frustration. I remember waking here. Nothing before that. Lyra stared at him, then toward the corner of the cabin. The wolf was gone. Her eyes widened. You were the wolf. The man slowly nodded. I believe so. She lowered the knife. You transformed. He looked down at his own hands almost as if seeing them for the first time. It appears that I did. Silence filled the room. Finally Lyra spoke again. Do you truly remember nothing? He closed his eyes. Pieces. Snow. Blood. Fighting. Someone shouting. Then darkness. Nothing more. Lyra believed him. Pain could not be faked that easily. She offered him a cup of warm water mixed with crushed herbs. Drink slowly. It will help. He accepted it. Thank you. She smiled gently. You already thanked me. When you refused to eat my food. Confusion crossed his face. I did that. You did. She laughed softly. Even as a wolf you were impossible to argue with. For the first time a faint smile appeared on the stranger's face. It disappeared almost immediately. Something felt wrong. His instincts screamed that memories remained buried somewhere deep inside him. Dangerous memories. Outside the storm continued growing stronger. Far beyond the cabin, another group of riders gathered beneath the trees. A woman dressed in elegant black armor stepped down from her horse. Her beautiful face showed no emotion, only cold determination. She picked up a broken arrow buried beneath fresh snow. Tiny traces of silver blood still covered its tip. She smiled, very softly. He survived. She looked toward the distant mountains where smoke from the hidden cabin barely rose above the forest. Find him. Kill anyone helping him. Leave no witnesses. Back inside the cabin, the mysterious stranger stood near the fire. As he adjusted the torn clothing covering his chest, something caught his eye. Around Lyra's neck hung a silver crescent moon pendant. His breathing suddenly stopped. His forgotten memories trembled at the edge of returning. He knew that pendant, but he could not remember why. The fire burned low as dawn slowly pushed away the darkness beyond the cabin walls. Snow continued falling across the mountains, but the violent storm had finally passed. Thin beams of pale sunlight slipped through the broken window and rested across the old wooden floor. For the first time in many days the forest seemed peaceful. Yet beneath that quiet beauty something invisible was moving. It felt like fate itself had begun turning a page that had remained closed for more than 20 years. The stranger stood silently near the doorway, while Lyra prepared another small bundle of healing herbs. His silver-gray eyes kept returning to the crescent moon pendant hanging around her neck. Every time he looked at it, another broken piece of memory flickered through his mind. A palace covered in silver banners, a little girl laughing beside a fountain, a woman wearing the very same pendant. Then blood, fire, screams. The memories vanished before he could hold them. He pressed one hand against his forehead. Lyra immediately noticed the pain crossing his face. Your head again. He nodded slowly. Every time I look at your pendant, something tries to return. She gently touched the old silver necklace. My mother gave this to me before she disappeared. She told me never to take it off. I was only 5 years old. It is the only thing I have left of her. The stranger looked at the pendant with quiet curiosity. Your mother never told you where it came from. Lyra slowly shook her head. She only said that one day the moon would guide me home. I never understood what she meant. The stranger remained silent. Those words stirred something deep inside him. Not an answer, only another question. Who was Lyra truly meant to become? After sharing the last of their dried food, they decided they could no longer remain inside the abandoned cabin. Their supplies were gone. The soldiers searching the forest would eventually discover the smoke from the fireplace. Staying meant certain death. The stranger stepped outside first and carefully studied the fresh snow covering the valley. No footprints, no movement. For now they were safe. Lyra wrapped her green cloak tightly around herself before following him into the frozen wilderness. Which way do we go? She asked quietly. The stranger stared toward the northern mountains. I do not know why, but something tells me we must keep moving north. Perhaps my memories are waiting there. Lyra smiled softly. Then north it is. The two travelers disappeared beneath towering pine trees while morning light shimmered across untouched snow. Hours passed as they climbed narrow mountain paths surrounded by cliffs covered in thick ice. The journey became harder with every step. Sharp rocks hid beneath fresh snow, while freezing winds rushed through the valleys below. Still they continued forward. Sometimes they walked in silence. Sometimes Lyra shared stories from her childhood to keep their spirits alive. She spoke about healing injured animals instead of playing games with other children. She spoke about spending lonely nights gathering herbs beneath moonlight. She never spoke with anger, only quiet sadness. The stranger listened carefully. You still chose to save me after everything people did to you. She smiled without looking at him. Pain teaches people who truly need kindness. Not everyone learns that lesson. He lowered his eyes. Very few would have done what you did. She laughed gently. Perhaps I am simply terrible at walking away from someone who needs help. For the first time in many days he laughed with her. The sound surprised them both. It felt strangely natural. By afternoon they reached the entrance of an ancient stone bridge stretching across a deep canyon. Thick vines covered its broken walls, while weathered statues of wolves lined both sides. Lyra slowed her steps. This place feels different. The stranger quietly nodded. Older. Much older. As they crossed the bridge, a strange warmth spread through the air. The cold faded. The wind disappeared. Everything became silent. Too silent. Then the pendant around Lyra's neck began glowing with soft silver light. She stopped walking. Did you see that? The stranger stared at the necklace. Before he could answer, the light grew brighter. Ancient symbols appeared across the stone bridge beneath Lyra's feet. The ground trembled. Hidden doors slowly opened inside the mountain. Dust filled the air as a forgotten temple revealed itself after centuries of silence. Neither of them spoke. The temple had been waiting. For her. They carefully stepped inside. Massive stone pillars stretched toward the ceiling where moon-shaped carvings covered every surface. Beautiful murals lined the walls showing ancient kings, queens, and warriors standing beneath silver moons with giant wolves beside them. At the very center of the temple stood a crystal fountain untouched by time. The water shimmered although no sunlight reached it. Lyra slowly walked closer. She felt drawn toward it, almost as though someone invisible whispered her name. The stranger watched cautiously. Something about this place awakened instincts he could not explain. Suddenly another voice echoed through the temple. "I wondered how long it would take you to find your way here." Lyra spun around. An elderly man, wearing long, white robes, stepped from the shadows. His silver hair reached his shoulders. His eyes carried countless years of wisdom. Despite his age, he stood tall and steady like an ancient tree, refusing to bow before time. The stranger instinctively stepped in front of Lyra. "Who are you?" The old man smiled kindly. "Someone who has spent 2 decades waiting." His eyes rested on Lyra. "Princess." The single word echoed through the temple. Lyra frowned. "You have mistaken me for someone else. I am no princess. I am only an Omega healer." The old man's gentle smile never faded. "That is what they wanted you to believe." He slowly walked toward the crystal fountain. 20 years ago, the Moonblood royal family was slaughtered in one terrible night. Everyone believed the royal child died with them. Everyone except me. Lyra's breathing became uneven. "No, that cannot be true." The old man looked directly into her emerald eyes. "Your mother did not abandon you. She saved you. She hid you inside the Moonstone Pack because it was the last place anyone would search for a royal heir. The pendant around your neck carries the seal of the Moonblood dynasty. Only members of the royal bloodline can awaken this temple." Tears slowly filled Lyra's eyes. All the unanswered questions from her childhood returned at once. Her mother's disappearance, the strange lullabies, the stories about the moon finding lost children, the way people often stared at her pendant without explanation. Everything suddenly carried new meaning. The stranger looked at Lyra, then toward the old man. If she truly belongs to the Moonblood line, then who destroyed her family? The warmth disappeared from the old man's face. His expression became heavy with sorrow. Greed destroyed them. Power destroyed them. Someone wanted the throne more than justice. Before he could say another word, a sharp whistle sliced through the silent temple. An arrow crashed into one of the stone pillars. Then another. Then dozens. The entrance exploded into chaos as black-armored warriors stormed inside with swords raised high. Their leader lowered her bow. Her cold smile slowly returned. Lady Selene had finally found them. She raised her blade toward Lyra. This time she said quietly, "The last princess dies for good." The first sword struck the stone floor with a sharp crash that echoed through the ancient temple. Dust rained from the towering pillars as black-armored warriors rushed inside like a wave of darkness, swallowing every ray of hope. Their heavy boots thundered across the sacred ground while cold steel flashed beneath the silver glow of the crystal fountain. The peace that had survived inside those ancient walls for centuries vanished in a single heartbeat. Lady Selene stepped through the broken entrance without hurry. Confidence surrounded her like an invisible crown. Her long black cloak flowed behind her while her emerald armor reflected the pale light of the temple. She carried herself with the calm certainty of someone who had already decided how the story would end. Her eyes settled on Lyra. "So you survived after all." Her voice was soft, almost gentle. That made it even more frightening. Lyra instinctively stepped backward. The stranger moved in front of her without hesitation. His body still carried the weakness of old wounds, but his stance never wavered. "Leave her alone." Selene studied him with quiet amusement. "You still breathe. That surprises me." For a brief moment confusion crossed the stranger's face. "You know me." A faint smile appeared on Selene's lips. "Better than you remember. You were always difficult to kill." Those words landed like stones inside his mind. Broken memories stirred once more. A throne room, silver banners, a circle of powerful alphas, someone smiling while hiding betrayal behind polite words. Then another image, a blade sliding into his back. Pain exploded through his skull. He stumbled to one knee. Lyra immediately caught his arm before he could fall. She looked at him with growing concern. "What is happening to you?" He struggled to breathe. "Every time I see her, another memory returns." Selene slowly drew her sword. Good. Then perhaps you will remember dying a second time. Before another word could be spoken, the first attackers charged. The temple erupted into chaos. Steel clashed against steel as the stranger grabbed a fallen spear from the floor and met the advancing warriors head-on. His movements were instinctive, smooth, precise. He fought like someone whose body remembered every battle, even while his mind remained trapped in darkness. One warrior swung a heavy axe. The stranger stepped aside. The axe struck empty air. He drove a spear forward. The attacker collapsed. Another rushed toward him. Then another. Neither reached Lyra. She watched in stunned silence. This was no ordinary fighter. Every movement carried years of impossible training. Even injured, he moved with frightening control. Meanwhile, Elder Orion raised both hands toward the crystal fountain. Ancient words rolled from his lips as silver light spread across the temple floor. The glowing symbols carved into the stone awakened one after another until the entire chamber shimmered beneath a blanket of moonlight. Several attackers cried out. Their weapons suddenly grew too heavy to lift. Others stumbled as invisible force pressed against their bodies. The sacred temple itself had begun protecting its rightful bloodline. Celine narrowed her eyes. Destroy the fountain. Now. Four warriors immediately changed direction and sprinted toward the glowing water. Elder Orion tried to stop them, but one sword sliced across his shoulder. Blood stained his white robes. He fell hard against a pillar. Lyra gasped. Without thinking, she ran toward him. The stranger shouted after her, "Stay back!" But she had already reached the old guardian. She dropped beside him. "Your wound. It is deep." Orion looked into her frightened eyes. "Forget me. Protect the fountain. If the sacred water falls, the royal seal will vanish forever." Before Lyra could answer, another warrior raised his sword above her. Time seemed to freeze. Then something impossible happened. The silver pendant around Lyra's neck burst into brilliant light. A wave of radiant energy exploded outward. The attacking warrior was thrown across the temple before crashing into a stone wall. Everyone stopped moving. Even Celine stared in disbelief. The pendant slowly floated above Lyra's chest. Silver light circled around her like gentle moonlit rain. The ancient carvings across the walls answered with the same glowing light. The temple had recognized its queen. Lyra looked down at her own trembling hands. She had never possessed power like this before. She whispered almost to herself, "What is happening to me?" Elder Orion smiled despite the blood running down his arm. "Your royal blood has awakened. You were never merely a healer. Healing was only the first gift the moon goddess placed inside you." Before anyone could recover from the shock, the temple shook violently. A deep rumble echoed through the mountain. Hidden doors began opening all around the chamber. Ancient stone walls emerged from the walls. Massive statues that had stood silent for centuries suddenly came alive. Their glowing eyes turned toward the invaders. Celine's confidence disappeared for the first time. "Retreat!" She shouted the order too late. The stone guardians charged. Their enormous bodies crashed into the enemy ranks with unstoppable force. Warriors scattered in every direction. Some fled toward the entrance. Others were buried beneath falling stone. The stranger seized the opportunity. He rushed toward Lyra and Elder Orion. "We must leave now. This temple will not hold forever." Together they escaped through one of the newly opened passages, while the ancient guardians continued battling the remaining attackers behind them. The hidden tunnel wound deep beneath the mountain. Cold air rushed through narrow stone corridors, lit only by glowing crystals embedded in the walls. Far behind them, the sounds of battle slowly faded. Finally, they reached an underground chamber where an ancient underground river flowed beneath the mountain. Everyone stopped to catch their breath. Lyra knelt beside Orion and carefully treated his wound with fresh herbs growing near the water. The old guardian watched her quietly. "Your mother had those same gentle hands." Lyra looked up. "You knew her?" Orion nodded. "She was the bravest queen I ever served. She knew enemies surrounded the throne. When the palace fell, she escaped with you before dawn. She trusted only one family inside Moonstone Pack. They promised to protect you." Lyra lowered her eyes. "Then why was I treated like nothing?" Sadness crossed Orion's face. "Because the family that promised to protect you was murdered only months later. The truth died with them. You grew up among strangers who never knew who you truly were." Tears silently filled Lyra's eyes. For years she had believed she was unwanted because she was weak. Now she discovered she had been hidden because she was too important. Across the chamber the stranger stood quietly beside the underground river. The moving water reflected across his face. His eyes suddenly widened. Another memory returned. He saw Lady Selene standing beside Alpha, Rowan, inside a secret council chamber. He heard Rowan's voice, clearly. Once the Alpha King dies, no one will stop us from controlling every pack. The vision disappeared. His breathing became uneven. He finally remembered one face. Rowan, the Alpha who rejected Lyra. The stranger slowly turned toward her. His expression had completely changed. He now understood something that filled him with dread. Lyra's former mate was not simply cruel. He was one of the men responsible for the conspiracy that nearly destroyed the entire kingdom. Before he could tell her, the sound of slow applause echoed through the underground chamber. Everyone turned. A group of armored soldiers blocked the only exit. Standing at their center was a familiar figure wearing black Alpha armor trimmed with silver fur. Alpha Rowan Blackthorn smiled as his cold eyes settled on Lyra. His voice carried through the chamber with quiet satisfaction. You have caused far more trouble than I expected. Now you are finally coming home. The underground chamber fell into a silence so heavy that even the rushing river seemed to lose its voice. Alpha Rowan Blackthorn stood at the entrance surrounded by more than 30 armed warriors. Their armor gleamed beneath the pale crystal light, while drawn swords reflected across the flowing water. No one spoke. No one moved. Every heartbeat stretched into an eternity. Lyra stared at the man who had destroyed her life only days before. His face was exactly as she remembered. Strong, proud, cold. Yet something inside his eyes had changed. The arrogance that once burned there had weakened. In its place lived something restless, something uncertain. He looked at her longer than he ever had during the years they belonged to the same pack. For the first time he truly saw her, not as an Omega, not as a burden, as a woman standing unafraid before an army. Rowan slowly stepped forward. His soldiers remained behind him. His voice came quietly. You have changed. Lyra answered without emotion. No, I simply stopped believing your opinion of me. Her words landed harder than any weapon. Several warriors lowered their eyes. Even they remembered the humiliation Rowan had forced upon her inside the Moonstone courtyard. Rowan drew a slow breath. The woman standing before him no longer looked broken. The frightened healer who had walked away through the snow was gone. In her place stood someone whose quiet confidence unsettled even an Alpha. His gaze shifted toward the stranger standing protectively beside her. Who are you? The stranger remained silent. He did not know his own name, but every instinct warned him never to trust the man before him. Rowan looked back at Lyra. Come with me. No one needs to die today. Lyra almost laughed. You threw me away before the entire pack. You left me to freeze in the mountains. Now you speak of mercy. His jaw tightened. Things have changed. You do not understand everything. Then help me understand. Her voice remained calm. Why am I suddenly worth bringing back alive? Rowan hesitated. For the first time since anyone had known him, he struggled to answer a simple question. Before he could speak, Lady Selene emerged from the shadows behind the soldiers. Her beautiful face carried the same calm smile as always. She folded her hands together. Enough pretending. We are running out of time. She looked directly at Rowan. Bring the princess to the capital. Alive. Kill everyone else. Lyra's heart sank. So Rowan already knew. He knew she was the lost princess. He knew the truth. And still he had chosen to hunt her. The final hope inside her disappeared. She looked into his eyes one last time. You rejected me because I was weak. Now you chase me because I am useful. You never wanted me. You only wanted power. Rowan opened his mouth. No, it is not that simple. She interrupted him. It never is for people who betray others. Those words cut deeper than any blade. For a brief moment, guilt crossed his face. Lady Selene noticed immediately. Her expression hardened. Finish this. Now. The soldiers charged. The underground chamber exploded into motion. The stranger grabbed a fallen sword and met the first attackers before they reached Lyra. His movements were faster than before. Cleaner. Every strike awakened another forgotten instinct buried deep inside him. One warrior lunged. He stepped aside. Another swung from behind. He turned without looking and blocked the attack perfectly. Rowan watched in growing disbelief. Nobody fought like that except one man. Impossible. His heartbeat quickened. No. He died. I saw him fall. Meanwhile, Lyra rushed toward Elder Orion as more soldiers surrounded them. The old guardian pressed a small silver object into her hand. A royal seal. Listen carefully. If anything happens to me, you must reach the Valley of White Moons. There are people still loyal to your family. They will protect you. Lyra shook her head. You are coming with us. Orion smiled sadly. Some journeys, and so others may continue. Before she could answer, an arrow flew through the chamber. It struck Orion directly in the chest. Time stopped. The old guardian staggered backward. Blood spread across his white robes. Lyra caught him before he fell. Tears instantly filled her eyes. No. Please. Not you too. Orion gently placed his trembling hand against her cheek. You are no longer hiding. You are becoming who you were born to be. Do not fear your blood. Lead with kindness, not revenge. Those were his final words. His hand slipped away. The guardian, who had protected the Moonblood family for decades, breathed his last. Lyra cried out. The sound echoed through the underground chamber, carrying years of loneliness inside it. Something awakened. The silver pendant around her neck burst into brilliant light. Power flowed through every part of her body. Not violent, not wild, pure. The underground river answered. Its waters began glowing beneath the crystal ceiling. Moonlight poured from nowhere. Every soldier stopped fighting. The air itself trembled. Lyra slowly rose to her feet. Tears still covered her face. Her emerald eyes now shimmered with silver light. The ancient blood of the Moonblood dynasty had fully awakened. Lady Selene stepped backward for the first time. Impossible. She should not awaken this early. Lyra lifted one hand. The glowing river surged upward like a living wall. Water crashed across the chamber, separating Selene's warriors from Rowan and the others. Chaos erupted. Several soldiers were thrown into the stone walls. Others dropped their weapons in fear. The stranger stared at Lyra. A forgotten memory finally returned completely. He saw her mother's face. He heard her final words spoken 20 years earlier. If anything happens to me, protect my daughter. She is the future of this kingdom. His eyes widened. Everything rushed back at once. His name, his throne, the betrayal, the ambush, the wolves who died protecting him, the council that turned against him, Lady Selene, Rowan. Every piece finally fit together. He slowly looked at Rowan. His voice no longer carried confusion. It carried authority. You betrayed your king. The entire chamber froze. Rowan's face lost all color. Only one man spoke with that voice. Only one alpha carried that command. The stranger stepped forward. His silver-gray eyes blazed like moonlit steel. Power rolled through the chamber so intensely that every wolf instinctively lowered their head. Even those fighting against him felt their wolves submit. Lady Selene whispered in horror. His memories returned. The man standing before them was no longer a nameless traveler. He was the ruler every alpha had believed dead. Rowan slowly dropped his sword. Shock overwhelmed every emotion inside him. His lips barely moved. Alpha King. Kaledraven. Silence swallowed the chamber. Rowan remembered every lie he had accepted, every promise of power, every cruel decision, every innocent life destroyed. Most of all, he remembered the woman he had rejected. Had he chosen differently? Had he protected Lyra instead of humiliating her? He would have stood beside the future Moon Queen. Instead, he had become the man history would remember as a traitor. For the first time in his life, true regret entered his heart. But regret arrived far too late. Before anyone could speak again, the entire mountain shook with terrifying force. Massive cracks raced across the ceiling. Ancient stone began collapsing around them. Lady Selene smiled despite the destruction. If I cannot rule this kingdom, then none of you will leave this mountain alive. Huge boulders crashed toward the only remaining exit as darkness swallowed the underground chamber. The mountain roared like an ancient beast awakened from centuries of sleep. Massive stones crashed from the ceiling while thick clouds of dust swallowed the underground chamber. The crystal lights embedded within the walls shattered one after another until darkness rushed through the tunnels. Every heartbeat carried another deafening explosion as the sacred temple hidden beneath the mountain began collapsing around them. Lyra covered her head as fragments of stone struck the ground around her. She could barely see through the choking dust. The glowing water that moments earlier had risen like a wall now rushed wildly through the broken passages, carrying shattered rocks deeper into the mountain. Someone grabbed her hand. Strong, steady. She looked up. Cale. No longer a nameless stranger. No longer a wounded wolf hiding from death. His silver-gray eyes held the calm strength of a king who had finally remembered who he was. Stay with me. His voice cut through the chaos with quiet authority. Do not let go. Lyra tightened her grip around his hand without hesitation. Behind them, Alpha Rowan shouted at his own warriors. Move the rocks. Open the passage. His soldiers rushed toward the blocked tunnel, pushing against fallen boulders with desperate strength. Some ignored him completely and fled through smaller cracks in the mountain. Others dropped their weapons and ran blindly through the darkness. Fear had destroyed discipline. Lady Selene watched the panic with cold satisfaction. If she could not control the kingdom, she would bury its future beneath these mountains forever. She quietly slipped into a narrow side tunnel while everyone else struggled to survive. No one noticed her disappearance. Cale did. His eyes followed the shadow moving through the dust. She is escaping. Lyra looked toward him. Then we stop her. Cale slowly shook his head. Not now. If we chase her, everyone here dies. First we save lives. Justice can wait. Those words settled deeply inside Lyra. Power had never changed the man she had rescued. Even after remembering he was the Alpha King, his first thought remained protecting others. Together they rushed toward the trapped warriors struggling beneath fallen stone. Cale lifted a massive slab that would have required 4 ordinary wolves to move. His muscles strained, but the stone slowly shifted. 3 frightened soldiers crawled free. One of them immediately dropped to his knees. Your Majesty, forgive us. Cale pulled him to his feet. Stand. Today we survived together. There will be time for judgment later. Nearby, Lyra knelt beside an injured warrior whose leg had been crushed beneath broken rock. Only days earlier she would have recognized him as one of Rowan's guards. He had laughed during her public rejection. He had done nothing while she was cast into the snow. Now he looked at her with fear and shame. Please, help me. I know I do not deserve it. Lyra stared at him for several silent moments. The memory of that terrible day returned. The laughter, the whispers, the humiliation. Her heart still carried those wounds. Then she remembered Elder Orion's final words. Lead with kindness, not revenge. She gently placed both hands over the injured leg. Soft silver light flowed from her palms. The broken bones slowly began mending. The warrior stared at her in disbelief. Why would you save me after everything? Lyra looked into his eyes. Because if I become cruel, then they have already won. The soldier lowered his head as tears filled his eyes. Forgive me. I was too weak to speak when you needed someone. Lyra offered him a quiet smile. Then become stronger from this moment forward. That is enough. One by one more warriors witnessed the kindness of the woman they had once called worthless. Something began changing inside them. Respect replaced prejudice. Admiration replaced pride. Far above the collapsing tunnels, sunlight finally broke through a widening crack in the mountain. Fresh air poured inside. Cale pointed upward. There. That is our way out. Working together, former enemies lifted fallen rocks, while Lyra healed those 2 injured to climb. The impossible slowly became possible. At last the survivors emerged onto the snowy mountainside beneath a bright winter sky. Everyone collapsed into the fresh snow, breathing deeply. They had escaped, but peace lasted only a heartbeat. A long, echoing horn sounded across the valley. Every head turned. Thousands of wolves appeared along the surrounding ridges. Their banners carried silver crowns surrounded by black claws. The royal army. Dozens of Alpha lords rode at the front wearing heavy armor that gleamed beneath the afternoon sun. Lyra instinctively stepped closer to Cale. Are they with Selene? Cale's expression remained unreadable. No. They're searching for me. The riders surrounded the mountain in perfect formation. One elderly Alpha dismounted first. His hair had turned white with age, but his back remained perfectly straight. The moment his eyes fell upon Cale, he froze. For several long seconds no one moved. Then the old Alpha slowly dropped to one knee. Your Majesty. His voice trembled with emotion. We searched every kingdom, every mountain, every forest. We believed we had failed you. One after another, every Alpha Lord followed. Thousands of warriors knelt across the snowy valley. The sound of metal armor striking the frozen ground echoed like thunder. Long live the Alpha King. The cry spread across the mountains. Long live the Alpha King. Long live the Alpha King. The very wolves hidden within the forests answered with powerful howls. Lyra stood speechless. Only now did she fully understand the man whose life she had saved. He was not simply a powerful alpha. He was the ruler of every alpha across the continent. Kale stepped forward. Rise. His command rolled across the valley. The alphas obeyed instantly. He looked across the faces of warriors who had remained loyal despite believing him dead. Emotion briefly softened his voice. You honored your oath. Now we honor those who never returned. Every warrior lowered their head in silence. Kale then turned toward Lyra. Without warning, he walked before the gathered army and extended his hand toward her. She hesitated. The entire valley watched. Kale spoke clearly enough for every wolf to hear. This woman crossed death itself to save a wounded wolf she believed was nothing more than a stranger. She expected no reward. She asked no name. She gave everything she had to preserve one life. Today I stand here because of her courage. The army looked toward Lyra with growing respect. Kale continued. From this day forward, anyone who insults Lyra Ashwood insults their king. Anyone who threatens her threatens the throne itself. The valley erupted with cries of loyalty. Lyra felt tears filling her eyes. Only a few days earlier, hundreds had laughed while she stood alone. Now thousands bowed their heads in gratitude. Even Alpha Rowan remained kneeling. His face carried unbearable regret. He could not look at Lyra. He finally understood the weight of everything he had thrown away. Not only had he rejected the woman chosen by the moon goddess, he had publicly humiliated the future queen of the kingdom. As the gathering slowly settled, an elderly royal physician approached Kale. His eyes rested on Lyra for only a moment before concern appeared across his face. Your Majesty, may I examine the young lady? Kale frowned. Is she injured? The physician gently shook his head. Perhaps, or perhaps something far more important. Lyra looked confused but nodded. The old healer carefully placed 2 fingers against her wrist and closed his eyes. Several silent moments passed. Then his eyes slowly opened. Shock covered his face. He stepped backward. Your Majesty, this cannot wait. Kale immediately sensed the seriousness in the old man's voice. Speak. The physician looked first at Lyra, then at the Alpha King. The moon goddess has blessed the royal bloodline. The future queen is carrying a child. Silence swept across the entire valley. Lyra's heart stopped. She stared at the old healer, unable to breathe. A child. Before anyone could process the impossible, news a lone raven circled high above the mountains, carrying a strip of black cloth tied around its leg. The message had only 3 words. The queen must die. The raven disappeared into the gray winter sky, leaving behind a silence colder than the mountain wind. Every warrior remained frozen where they stood. The strip of black cloth fluttered inside Kale's hand while the 3 words written upon it echoed through every heart. The queen must die. No signature, no seal, only a threat. Kale slowly folded the message and slipped it inside his cloak. His face remained calm, but every alpha standing near him recognized the dangerous stillness in his eyes. The enemy was no longer hiding behind shadows. They had declared war against the future of the kingdom itself. Lyra instinctively placed one hand over her stomach. She still struggled to believe the royal physician's words. A child, a new life. The future heir of the Moonblood dynasty. The thought filled her heart with both joy and fear. She had survived rejection, exile, and betrayal. Now another innocent life depended entirely upon her strength. Kale noticed the uncertainty in her eyes. He stepped closer until only she could hear his voice. You are not alone anymore. No one will touch you. Not while I breathe. His words carried no grand promise, only absolute certainty. For the first time since leaving the Moonstone Pack, Lyra allowed herself to believe that someone truly meant those words. Within hours, the royal army marched toward the capital. Thousands of wolves filled the snow-covered roads, stretching farther than the eye could see. Silver banners danced beneath the winter wind, while villagers gathered along the roads in stunned silence. Many had believed their Alpha King was dead. Now they watched him return at the head of the greatest army assembled in generations. News spread faster than the marching wolves. The Alpha King lives. The lost princess has returned. The royal bloodline survives. Every village repeated the same story. Every kingdom heard the same whispers. Meanwhile, inside the royal palace, fear quietly spread through the council chambers. Lady Selene stood before the remaining members of the royal council. Some looked terrified, others avoided meeting her eyes. One elderly council member finally broke the silence. "It is over. The king has returned. We should surrender before more blood is spilled." Selene slowly turned toward him. Her smile was calm, almost kind. Then she drew a hidden dagger and drove it straight into his chest. The old council member collapsed before anyone could react. His body struck the marble floor with a dull sound that echoed through the chamber. Selene looked at the others. Anyone else wishes to surrender? No one answered. Fear had stolen every voice. 3 days later, the gates of the royal capital slowly opened. Thousands of citizens crowded every street, hoping to catch a glimpse of their returning king. Children sat upon their father's shoulders. Old women wiped tears from their faces. Veteran soldiers stood proudly in polished armor despite their age. As Kale rode through the gates, every bell inside the city began ringing together. The sound rolled across rooftops like waves crashing against stone cliffs. Long live the Alpha King. The cry rose from every direction. Lyra rode beside him wearing a simple silver cloak rather than royal clothing. She wanted the people to see her as she truly was, not as a queen, not as a princess, simply as the healer who had never stopped believing that kindness still mattered. Many recognized her story before they recognized her face. Some openly cried, others bowed deeply. Parents gently pointed toward her while speaking to their children. "That is the woman who saved our king. Never forget her courage." Lyra smiled shyly. The warmth she received felt unfamiliar after years of rejection. Yet one pair of eyes watched from the highest palace tower. Lady Selene. Her expression remained unreadable. Soon she whispered softly, "Very soon." That afternoon the great hall filled with every alpha lord, council elder, and noble family still loyal to the throne. The trial would begin. Heavy chains echoed across the marble floor as captured conspirators were brought before the court. Some admitted their crimes immediately. Others begged for mercy. Several blamed Fear. None escaped judgment. Finally, Alpha Rowan Blackthorn entered the hall. The proud Alpha, who had once ruled Moonstone Pack, now walked in silence with iron chains around his wrists. His shoulders no longer carried arrogance, only regret. The entire hall watched him kneel before the throne. Kale looked down at him. "You stand accused of betraying the crown, joining the conspiracy against your king, abandoning your sacred oath, and publicly rejecting the woman chosen by the moon goddess. Do you deny these charges?" Rowan slowly lifted his head. His eyes found Lyra standing beside the throne. For several long moments he could not speak. When his voice finally came, it carried none of the pride that had once defined him. "I deny nothing. Every accusation is true." The hall remained silent. Rowan continued, "I believed power would bring respect. Instead it destroyed every honorable part of me." He turned fully toward Lyra. "I cannot ask forgiveness because I do not deserve it. The greatest mistake of my life was not losing my throne. It was failing to see the woman standing before me. I measured worth by strength, by blood, by status. You possessed more courage than I ever did, and I was too blind to recognize it." His words were sincere. Even the nobles who had despised him could hear genuine regret. Lyra quietly stepped forward. She looked into the eyes of the man who had shattered her heart before an entire pack. Strangely, she felt no hatred, only peace. "You cannot change what happened." She spoke gently, "But you can choose the man you become tomorrow. Live with your mistakes. Protect those you once ignored. That will be your punishment." Rowan lowered his head. Tears fell silently onto the marble floor. "Thank you." Kale rose from the throne. His voice carried across the hall. "Alpha Rowan Blackthorn is stripped of his title and lands. He will spend the remainder of his life serving the border villages destroyed during the conspiracy. He will rebuild every home his ambition helped destroy. This is the judgment of a crown." No one objected. It was justice without cruelty, exactly as the kingdom needed. The great doors suddenly burst open. A wounded royal scout stumbled inside covered in blood and snow. He fell to one knee. "Your Majesty, the eastern fortress has fallen. Selene has gathered the remaining traitors. She has declared herself the rightful ruler." Gasps spread across the hall. The scout struggled to continue. "She has something else. Something taken from the royal archives. An ancient prophecy." Cale frowned. "What prophecy?" The scout swallowed painfully. He looked toward Lyra before answering. "It says the child carried by the Moonblood Queen will either unite every wolf beneath one throne or destroy every kingdom before reaching adulthood." Silence swallowed the great hall. Every noble stared toward Lyra, some faces filled with hope, others with fear. Far away beyond the palace walls, black banners began rising above the eastern horizon. Lady Selene had gathered an army unlike any the kingdom had faced before. The final battle was no longer coming. It had already begun. Before sunrise, the royal capital stood completely silent. Thick silver mist drifted through the empty streets, while thousands of warriors waited behind the towering city walls. No one laughed. No one spoke above a whisper. Every soldier understood that the coming battle would decide more than a kingdom. It would decide whether hope survived another generation or disappeared beneath endless war. Far beyond the eastern hills, the first rays of morning revealed an ocean of black banners moving across the frozen plains. Lady Selene had come. Her army stretched from one horizon to the other. Wolves from broken packs marched beside mercenaries and traitorous alphas who had chosen greed over honor. Their armor darkened the snow like a spreading shadow. High above them, black ravens circled through the pale sky. Cale stood upon the city wall, watching every movement. His silver cloak danced in the freezing wind. Years earlier, he had stood on this very wall as a young king, believing loyalty alone could protect a kingdom. Now he understood that kingdoms survive because ordinary people chose courage, even when fear offered an easier path. Lyra quietly joined him. She looked toward the approaching army. "There are so many." Cale gently took her hand. "There were many more standing against you on the day you were rejected. Yet you still found the strength to walk forward. You have been preparing for this moment longer than you realize." She smiled softly, not because she believed victory was certain, because someone finally believed in her. A great horn echoed across the battlefield. Lady Selene rode forward upon a massive black wolf. She wore dark armor, decorated with silver thorns, while a stolen royal crown rested upon her head. She stopped halfway between the two armies. Her voice rolled across the frozen plain. "Caeldraven, you return from the dead only to protect a child who will destroy everything you built. Give me the princess. Give me the unborn heir. End this before countless wolves die." Silence followed her challenge. Cale slowly walked beyond the city gates. Every warrior watched him. He stopped alone in the center of the battlefield. "You murdered a queen. You hunted a child. You betrayed your own kingdom. Do not speak to me about saving lives." Selene laughed. "Truth is written by whoever survives today." Without warning, she lifted her sword. "Attack!" The battlefield exploded. Thousands of wolves charged together. The earth trembled beneath countless running feet. Battle cries filled the frozen air while steel crashed against steel in every direction. Cale transformed first. Silver light burst around him. A heartbeat later, the enormous silver wolf stood where the king had been. His thick fur shimmered beneath the morning sun. The old scar across his left eye made him appear even more terrifying. He leaped directly into the enemy ranks. One strike scattered several attackers. Another sent armored wolves crashing through the snow. Every loyal warrior followed their king with renewed courage. Meanwhile, Lyra remained inside the protective circle formed by the royal guard. She refused to hide. Every injured soldier carried to her received the same gentle care, whether noble or common, whether Alpha or Omega. Silver healing light flowed continuously from her hands. One wounded young warrior looked at her through tears. "I cannot return to the fight. My leg is shattered." Lyra smiled gently. "Then let me help you stand again." Warm light surrounded the broken limb. The pain disappeared. The young soldier slowly stood. Hope replaced fear inside his eyes. "Thank you, my queen." One after another, injured wolves returned to battle, carrying new determination because one healer refused to abandon them. Across the battlefield, Selene saw everything. Destroy the healer. Now. A hidden group of assassins broke away from the fighting and raced toward Lyra. The royal guard immediately met them. The battle around the healer became desperate. Swords flashed. Arrows darkened the sky. One assassin slipped through the defenders. He rushed toward Lyra with poisoned blades raised high. Before he reached her, another figure stepped into his path. Alpha Rowan. His armor was cracked. Blood covered one side of his face. Yet his eyes carried complete certainty. You will not touch her. The assassin attacked. Rowan blocked the first strike. Then another. Finally he drove his sword forward. The assassin collapsed into the snow. A second attacker fired an arrow. Rowan saw it too late. The arrow buried itself deep within his chest. He staggered backward. Lyra rushed toward him. Please, stay with me. Rowan smiled weakly. For the first time since they had met, there was no pride inside him. Only peace. I spent my life protecting the wrong things. Today I finally chose correctly. Blood filled his lips. Tell the people of Moonstone Pack that I was sorry. Every day. He slowly closed his eyes. The Alpha, who had once humiliated her, died protecting the woman he had failed to value. Lyra silently lowered her head. May the moon goddess grant you the peace you could never find in life. Far across the battlefield, Kale reached Lady Selene. Their wolves collided with terrifying force. Snow burst into the air around them. Neither gave ground. Selene transformed back into human form and drew twin black blades glowing with dark magic. You should have stayed dead. Kale answered with his own sword. You should have remembered your oath. Their duel shook the battlefield. Every strike echoed like thunder. Selene fought with desperate fury. Kale fought with calm precision. Finally she lunged one last time. Kale stepped aside. Her blade missed. His sword stopped against her throat. The battlefield became silent. Thousands watched the final moment. Selene laughed despite defeat. Kill me! Another traitor will rise. Another war will come. Kale slowly lowered his sword. No. Your greatest punishment is watching this kingdom heal without you. Royal guards surrounded her. The last leader of the conspiracy fell into chains. As the black banners slowly dropped across the battlefield, a single beam of sunlight broke through the winter clouds. The long war had ended. Weeks later, the great hall of the royal palace shone brighter than it had in decades. Every surviving Alpha Lord gathered beneath silver banners carrying the ancient crest of the Moonblood dynasty. Flowers filled the hall. Children laughed once more. Hope had finally returned. Kale stood before the ancient throne wearing the royal cloak that had been hidden since the night of his betrayal. Beside him stood Lyra, dressed in flowing silver and white robes. She looked neither frightened nor uncertain. She looked exactly as she had always been. Kind, strong, quietly unbreakable. The High Elder stepped forward holding the crown of moonlight. He placed it gently upon Lyra's head. His voice echoed through the silent hall. By the blessing of the moon goddess and the will of every loyal pack, I present Lyra Ashwood as the rightful moon queen of all wolves. Thunderous applause filled the palace. Thousands bowed together. Kale turned toward Lyra and smiled. Then he spoke the words the entire kingdom had waited to hear. No longer will history remember you as the rejected Omega. From this day until the end of time, you will be remembered as the queen who healed a wounded wolf and saved an entire kingdom. At that very moment, the ancient crescent pendant around Lyra's neck began glowing once more. The silver light spread across the throne room before gently surrounding her unborn child. The High Elder watched with tears in his eyes. The oldest prophecy had been misunderstood for centuries. The royal heir was never destined to destroy the kingdom. The child would destroy only one thing: the hatred that had divided wolves for generations. And beneath the light of the full moon, every wolf in the kingdom finally understood that true strength had never belonged to the strongest alpha. It had always belonged to the kindest heart.